My name is Christin Washington, and I am class of 2017.
Could you describe what it was like to be in Frost during Amherst Uprising?
Yes. So while in Frost, I feel like it was a lot of adrenaline pumping through me. I was, I had never seen anything like it at Amherst College, but I knew that it was something similar to what Professor Drabinski had described in our Panther Theory class when we reviewed Black Revolution on campus and we talked about the history of specifically Amherst College and protests there. So I just remember like feeling like this moment could be it. And but not knowing exactly what the next steps were or if there were going to be next steps um, because it started as a sit-in. But I know it got uncomfortable when the administration came in and they wouldn't like sit at a sit-in. So it was just strange. Like, and they were called out for it. And so I'm like, oh, people are ready to call out. And Christine, my friend, um, what my Guyanese heritage culture would call like an upstart, like ready to make noise, ready to disrupt. And she was like, "This kind of doesn't make sense," and I'm over there like, "Yeah, you're right. It doesn't make sense." And so we started talking about like interpersonally, like what we've gone through that mirrored some of the same things that had happened at Yale and Mizzou, the places that we were sitting in solidarity with. And then Christine got louder. So I'm like, now the adrenaline is really pumping because she's telling her story and other people are feeling I don't know, like inspired to tell their story too. And they weren't positive stories. So I'm like, this is scary. Like what happens next? And um yeah, after everyone is telling their stories, I remember Amir very vividly being like Biddy needs to come back from her trip. And so that was like, okay, now it's urgency. So it's anxiety, it's urgency, it's a lot of energy as well. But yeah, it was a time that even talking about it now, like it's like kind of giving me the shakes.
How would you describe the stories and experiences that students were sharing?
The stories were really they were hard to hear. But they weren't anything I hadn't heard before, but I always heard them in the context of very smaller environments. So in the context of BSU or AXU, the African Caribbean Student Union. Um, so to hear it in the library where there were so many people, I knew they weren't intimate stories, or they were intimate stories, but they weren't telling them in an intimate setting. So then there's always like what happens when you share this to ears that are not willing to understand. So I had like that in the back of my mind. But the stories were hard, and I personally told my story as well. So one of the things that happened on Amherst College campus, and to see Amherst not respond effectively or rapidly to a incident where I felt I was harmed. And that was specifically, I was on the bus coming back or heading to, I think coming back from Mount Holyoke, a party that we had went to. And there's this like white man on the bus and he runs his hand through my hair and I was livid. I'm usually not especially at Amherst, I was never the buck wild person, never the upstart. But I was livid at that, like, why are you touching me? I've never experienced it before. Mind you, I went to a predominantly white institution at Loomis Chaffee for high school, a boarding school, and I never experienced that. I experienced a lot of other things, but never that, like putting your hands on me. So that just blew up, and I'm telling the story of like how upon reporting it to the police, because it turned into like a big yelling session. There was literally, I got the recording from PVTA, so I can hear everything, and did a transcript of it, sent it to the police, Amherst College police. No one did anything. They were supposed to like get in contact with him, nothing. So sharing that story of like the inaction from the college in front of the administration was like, I remember my voice shaking. I remember um just feeling like, okay, is this something that I should be sharing, or is this something that they're going to do something about, because they have done very little so far. But it was like a ripple effect. Like every story that happened, every story that was told continued to compound, to see how much like the college sits on things that they do not or did not care about. Um and some of the other stories, like they're happening all across campus. So it's like, having a someone who committed genocide against Native peoples while actively advocating for Native students to be at the college, like the dissonance there, to speak about the football team recruiting students and not allowing current students, specifically like Black Southern students. There was one that I'm thinking specifically of, um, from having a student, and knowing that that's wrapped up in racism and like, ideas of what intelligence is. And yeah, there's so many other stories, and it probably, from my memory, I'm thinking like it was a couple hours where people are just telling stories. And it was impactful because, when you're doing things in silos, you don't know if it's going to move the needle. But when so many people have an account of these things, it's like the ball is in your court, Amherst College.
Can you talk about what motivated you to share your story during Amherst Uprising, and if there are any conversations you remember afterwards that particularly stick out in your memory?
What motivated me to tell the story? I think it's literally like, what else is there? Like, especially because I worked as a like not campus security, like there was like a job on campus where you can work as security for parties. So I knew like very closely the people that were on task or on at work, for police, the Amherst College police. And I was just like, y'all also did not take my safety seriously, but I work for y'all. And to hear everybody say the same thing, so that's beyond Amherst College Police, but also the administration. It's like, y'all didn't take my concerns seriously, but you were willing to hire me to protect other students. Like, who are those other students that you're protecting? Um, so I kind of felt like, yeah, like y'all didn't give two flying hockey sticks about me. So, and it's clear that all of the other students you didn't care too much about either. And the type of students that are telling their stories, the identities, the trend in the people that you didn't care about. I'm like, oh, this is very intentional. Like, y'all are protecting certain people. And so if you're gonna protect them, and right now we're telling stories about being able to protect everyone. I'm part of that everyone. I'm a student at Amherst College too. Um, I was also employed by the college. So it's like, come on, I double protection I should be getting as far as I'm concerned. So it was just, I felt camaraderie in the stories that people were sharing. And I felt that if there was any better time to expose that truth, something that people were sitting on that I was emailing about, trying to have follow-ups about, it was the best time was like in that moment.
After the first few days of the sit-in, with students like yourself sharing these stories, did you witness changes on campus between relationships between students or with faculty and staff as well? Did the energy on campus feel a shift after that moment?
There was definitely a shift. I don't know if it was like, I wouldn't say it's a shift that was like, oh, like everything has changed, everything is positive now. I think that it was discomfort. And that discomfort was like, okay, so now we have to talk about it. I also was a Black Studies and Political Science double major. So I think the conversations in those arenas, specifically within Black Studies, was very much tailored once classes began to, or yeah, once those departments decided to like hold classes, those conversations were tailored to the moment. And prior to classes starting, I did, see specific professors coming in and supporting students. So um, I really don't, I can't speak to the lack of support when I think of like science departments and the econ department, but I've heard stories. But for me, I felt very supported. Like the faces that I was seeing in classrooms were the faces that were inside the library. So Professor Parham pulled up. She spoke to us directly, and was, I mean, they're telling us, Professor Parham, Professor Jabinski, Professor Comsander, um, the QRC staff, like these people are talking about endurance. They're talking about um, endurance while organizing because you burn out, getting rest, making sure that the wording of our demands are they make sense. That we use our Amherst College education to provoke change. It was a level of support that I always felt in classrooms, specifically in the Black Studies department. So I think it was enhanced by Amherst Uprising. Yeah, I would say that it was, at least for the professors that I was close to. And yeah, to see the QRC staff literally like hold space. And when I say hold space, I mean like it was almost like a fortress of, and maybe fortresses are not the right word because it like implies like impenetrable, but they were open. They held the space, and it was for you to come, and like they had snacks, and um they were holding like meditation and conversation and just a space to breathe in the midst of it all. And I felt like I actually didn't understand the importance of it in the moment, but to look back and realize that they intentionally did that was it's just another display of support for people that actually understand what marginalization looks like, um and how those moments of care and those spaces of care are even more important when there's like a lot of hot button topics and things to deal with.
Looking back now at Amherst Uprising and everything that happened and how the demands and the goals were responded to and outlined, what do you think of the legacy of it on the college, whether what it has been or what it should be?
I would So my hope is that it inspires change in the same way, or inspires other students to continue to advocate for what they want in the same way that, in the same year, or maybe I think it was the same year that we studied the Panthers and studied, the people that chained themselves to Converse and advocated for a Black Studies department. I imagine like people will feel inspired to know that this was a movement and a moment um, in Amherst College history, but history at large, to continue to do that type of work, both within and outside of the college. Um, I know that we have the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I think that's always going to be a fight. I think I'm still learning what these initiatives actually do. And sometimes it's like a cover up. Sometimes it is a um yeah, it's like this weird way of like pulling in the marginal. But as long as you have control of it over it, you can kind of decide how far you want to go. But yeah, I hope that there's more radical change, and that the legacy is about radical change. I don't think that radical change has happened yet, but I think that there's potential for it. Um, I also feel like I am disconnected from the college and what they are doing. And in the wake of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, you know, the man who recently, I think his name is Walter, I can't remember his last name, that recently was gunned down in Philadelphia. It's like, and the fact that Amherst College has to put out another statement to say this is what we're doing means that Amherst Uprising did not push them as far as they needed to go to ensure racial equity, um, gender equity, all the things that were asked for in the demands. Like they didn't push as far as they actually could. So I think again, there's space to both imagine and employ radical change, but the question is how much of a push will the college need, and how much of a push is are do they feel? So yeah, I don't know if I have an answer to that question. It's hard and I talked a lot, but I don't think I have a real answer to the question.
Since Amherst Uprising, both nationally, as you've referenced, but then also at the college on campus this year, there's been Integrate Amherst, Black Amherst Speaks, Reclaim Amherst, all movements also led by Black students at the college to push for it to do better on the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Clearly, students now feel that, like you're saying, the college hasn't gone far enough. What what are some of the things that you're hoping for, some of the impacts that you know need to be made um, to improve life on campus, improve relationships with Black alumni?
Ooh, I don't know if my imagination is big enough, but I because there's so much, and I'll kind of take some words from Angela Davis when asked about colorism in the Black Panther Party, where she's like, "Well, if darker skinned women, darker skinned people still feel discriminated against, I'm not doing enough." Like, so I think there's so much more that I can dream of than what I'm thinking of now. But the first is support the people that support the students. And those people to me have been Black women. I've said it before. So this is probably on record saying it. So I'll say it again. I think that we have to do our due diligence. We, Amherst College, have to do our due diligence in retaining Black women staff and faculty. Um, there were at least two of the most pivotal people in my time at the college that did not stay. And I cannot 100% blame Amherst College because I do not know what happened in the background. But I know they had so much potential for transforming Amherst in the way that we teach students how to think. They taught me what it meant to like really think critically, what it meant to say more, in the words of Professor Knight, Christina Knight. So yeah, I think the level of support in order for the students to feel comfortable, and I'm thinking of all the students, it's not just Black women who were, um, you know, affected positively by these Black women, professors, staff, faculty, but students at large. And I think it's important to have them there. So that's one of the major changes. I think um, there's dorm life, which there's always nonstop an incident of like racial slurs being carved into cars, which was happening. I think I was like my first or second year at Amherst. Um, and I think they have to act fast and act swift on those incidences to let people know that that is unacceptable. And I don't think that Amherst acts swiftly enough when it comes to any racial injustice. So if there's that language, I think has to be, and I'm not sure if it has, but I think it should be updated from what I had previously seen while at the college, should be updated. So it's very clear on what is unacceptable, especially when it comes to racial injustice and violence. If I'm thinking social life, I think affirming students and their heritage and their cultures, and allowing our events to feel centered, not like, oh, here it is in this like random space, or you have to go off campus to enjoy your social life. I think that it doesn't have to be institutionalized, but I think that it has to be accepted. Um, Academically, I think there's a lot of work that the sciences has to do. I know I would like nonstop see Black students come back like crying from exams. I know it's not limited to Black students, but I that mean to me, if you're walking away crying from exams like on a regular basis, the support is just not there. So I don't know what that means to get that support, but take some pointers from the Black Studies Department in offering the support that they have offered. Um, Curriculum changes, like integrating completely the study of race into each and every department, because it's not devoid of, like, race is not devoid of any of the topics that we research or we study at the college. So again, that, I mean, to me, that feels, it doesn't feel very imaginative because I feel like it's very simple. So again, I have to challenge my own imagination, but I also think that is a far, like a large feat for the college. The fact that even some people feel so disconnected from the college after they leave is indicative of like your memory literally like separating from the moments. Because some of it is not good. Some of it is not, it's not what you want to remember. So um, I've seen a similar type of action on like things that need to change from the Black students or Black alumni from my high school. And I don't think that Black people should have to lead that type of charge, but we end up with the work. Um, so yeah, whatever it takes for the college to really take ownership of the work, like the really big work that needs to be done. But yeah.
Are there any other thoughts you'd like to offer on Amherst Uprising?
I just, I'm like, what would it mean to teach, like teach this in Amherst Uprising in the college, like not as a class, but like here's institutional history, you know, like the fact that I didn't know about Converse, people changed themselves to Converse until I got to Panther Theory. I'm like, of course an institution doesn't want to teach revolution, especially at their own expense, but I think they should. So yeah, I think Amherst Uprising should be a part of a general curriculum. I think it should be a part of like the first year seminar, you know, like the history of change, especially in the moment right now where we are literally going through such unprecedented moments. I think unprecedented maybe not even be the right word, even though people use it a lot, because all of these things have been happening in smaller pockets. And then because of the economy, because of the virus, because of very visible accounts of racial terrorism, now we're starting to see like it on a grander scale. But I think there's merit in teaching this stuff because you're teaching change. You're teaching people who are the movers, the shakers, the disruptors. You're teaching what that looks like, how they're getting in front of it as opposed to being reactive. They're being proactive. So having that a part of the curriculum to teach about proactive change, which will better equip us as people, as humans, as change makers outside of Amherst to know how to deal with the next unknown.